Welcome to this third on-demand training for the West Virginia Birth to Three's Interim Service Coordinator Family Assessment Training. In this training, we will discuss conversational interviewing and consider the actual sections of the family assessment form. Within this lesson, we're going to discuss the power of using conversation as a means to connecting with and building positive relationships with families throughout the family assessment process. Additionally, we're going to walk through the sections of the family assessment for a little bit deeper of an understanding into the rationale behind the questions asked of families and how we can actually use this understanding of why we're asking these questions in order to assist families in their own feelings of comfort throughout the family assessment. By the end of this lesson, we really hope that you're going to feel comfortable in the questions that we're asking families during the family assessment, and also that you feel more comfortable with the conversational style that's being used to gather this information. Understandably, this shift from intake or interview to that of conversation will require some practice, but in time we hope that through conversation and our ability to make this process feel natural and connected with families, that you're going to find that your relationship with families are deepening and discover meaningful moments in the family's life that are going to assist in moving to create those powerful IFSPs. In order to begin this conversation on conversational interviewing, we must first understand where this philosophy came from. We're actually using a model of interviewing called motivational interviewing as our backdrop for conversations with families. So what is motivational interviewing? Motivational interviewing is actually a counseling style used to elicit behavior change by helping clients explore and resolve their ambivalence in a situation. This method was actually developed by two clinical psychologists, William R. Miller and Stephen Rolnick, from experiences in what they described as problem thinking. So, in what is a very brief overview, motivational interviewing was developed to assist clients in the counseling relationship to uncover some of those feelings of indecision, doubt, and uncertainty that can arise in their behaviors and their thoughts about changing these behaviors. A very important element of motivational interviewing involves the counselor's ability to be empathetic in their interactions with clients. The ability to listen empathetically has been found to increase the positive changes in behavior and promote the overall success in therapy. Additionally, motivational techniques have been found to help assist clients through recognizing their risk behaviors by becoming reflective and feeling supported in the process, understanding how the challenging behaviors are actually affecting their other areas of life, and beginning to consider or possibly look at change. This includes the ability to move toward an action plan by being reflective, introspective, and feeling supported and understood. Overall, the goal of motivational interviewing is about assisting clients in becoming reflective while resolving any feelings of indecision, doubt, or uncertainty, what has been called ambivalence, around any potential behaviors that require change. And this is all done through the support and empathetic stance of the counselor. So you might be wondering, why are we looking at motivational interviewing in the family assessment for birth to three? Well, we too are supporting families in their ability to reflect on behaviors that are occurring, whether it be the child's or their own styles of dealing with difficult issues related to parenting their children and just generally feeling successful in their daily lives. We've used motivational interviewing as a model to build what we in Birth to Three can use to assist families in their reflective ability to describe their child's and their family's life. So while motivational interviewing is a counseling style, we know that we're not necessarily counselors in the homes of families, but we are walking families through their reflective ability to describe what is happening in their lives so that we will be able to form a plan that will ignite some changes in behaviors within the family to assist their child's developmental needs. Knowing what we do about motivational interviewing as a model for reflection, readiness, and change, we also add in the needs specific to those families utilizing Birth to Three services in order to describe our model of interviewing, which has been decided upon by the implementation team as conversational interviewing. What we know is that sometimes this process of sharing and reflection can be difficult for families, and this is where we require motivational interviewing's use of empathy and acceptance for the family in their unique situations. We had the opportunity to cover our dispositions with families within the last training, and now we will begin to allow the West Virginia Birth to 3 model of conversational interviewing for the family assessment to take shape. So within this West Virginia Birth to 3 model of conversational interviewing, we're actually going to borrow several key ingredients from the motivational interviewing to describe the process of allowing families to open up and share their story with us as interim service coordinators. The first of them being, as described in the previous training, as positive dispositions. Additionally, and the focus of this training are the simple techniques for being more conversational in your interviews with families. These include, number 1, asking open-ended questions. Number 2, listening reflectively. Number 3, creating those feelings of self-motivation for families or reinforcing their progress. Number 4, affirming the family. And number 5, summarizing what you've heard. As we go through the family assessment form in sections, we'll have the opportunity to see these skills in action. However, we will now briefly describe these skills to allow you to think through some of the opportunities that may benefit you in your family assessment with families in their homes. The first area that we're going to consider are open-ended questions. Open-ended questions provide the room and invitation for expansion. Now, closed-ended questions, by contrast, are going to offer us a yes, no, or short answer. And this can be seen through the 2 examples of questions. Number 1, do you have a job? And number 2, tell me a little bit about how you spend most of your day. Now, as you can see, each question is going to answer whether or not somebody has a job, but the second way of asking the open-ended question allows for someone to tell a story around the question versus simply saying yes or no. So we're going to consider for a moment how this might play out in a family assessment situation. When we ask the question, what are Johnny's favorite foods? Or, can you please tell me a little bit about Johnny's appetite and how Johnny eats at meal times? If we consider those 2 questions, the response to the first one might be something like, potatoes, chicken nuggets, milk, cheese, bread, and peanut butter sandwiches. Now, the response to the second question could sound a little something like this. Oh boy, mealtimes are rough. Johnny's pretty picky, so we often end up accommodating him with a separate meal. He's only wanting to eat potatoes, chicken nuggets, milk, cheese, bread, and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So it's really hard to get him to try new foods, and we often just end up giving up fighting, and we're going to give him what he's going to eat. Now, these 2 responses are an example of how we can learn Johnny's favorite foods in both scenarios. However, when we ask an open-ended question of, can you please tell me a little bit about Johnny's appetite or how Johnny's eating at meal times, we get a story versus a list. And this story allows us to further examine the different elements other than just his favorite foods. And we have learned the family's frustration with Johnny's picky eating in addition to those foods that are, in fact, his favorite. So as you can see, through the use of these open-ended questions, we actually have a better opportunity to learn about the family and the heart of the issues that they face, which is essentially their story around the interview questions that are being asked. Our second skill that we're going to focus upon is reflective listening. Now, the great thing about practicing your ability to become a reflective listener is that it not only improves your ability to become and continue to be an incredible interim service coordinator during the family assessment, but it also provides you with the skills that might even enhance your own relationships with those you love, which can help you become a better wife, husband, parent, or a friend. Now, reflective listening involves paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is a way of relaying that you have heard what somebody has shared with you. It doesn't assume a stance of fixing or providing any potential solutions. It simply restates in your own words what has been shared with you. So following the response of the family in Johnny's favorite foods, you might paraphrase by saying, "It sounds like mealtimes can become quite stressful for your family." These short statements allow families to hear that we're not just writing things down for the purposes of checking things off, but that we're actually listening to their stories and we're empathizing with them. The third area that we'd like to cover is reinforcing progress. We also want to provide families with our skill of reinforcing progress, which allows them to reflect on the positive progress that they've experienced. Reinforcing progress allows families to identify where they've been successful and potentially expand on how they feel about this progress and spend a moment reflecting upon it. For example, in response to Johnny's diet, we have paraphrased that it sounds like meal times have become quite stressful for your family. And the family may respond, "Yes, we've made some progress with it, but we've felt so overwhelmed by his pickiness that we just seem to give up." This type of statement then opens the door to allow us to spend a moment with the family reinforcing their progress with a statement such as, "It sounds like you have experienced some progress with this, and how does that make you feel?" Or, "Hey, progress is always great and feels so good and rewarding in that moment. It sounds like you've experienced that from time to time with Johnny's eating. Can you tell me a little bit about what it felt like when you experienced that success?" By simply allowing the family to feel as though someone's excited to share in their progress, we set the tone for Birth to Three as a supportive and compassionate organization. The next area that we're going to cover is the idea of affirmation. Affirming for a family is supporting, encouraging, and recognizing their difficulties and challenges. Now, this might include relaying to the family, "I can hear how difficult this has been for you, and while you have made some progress, you've been hoping for more and would like to see Johnny eating more foods. Is that correct?" When we affirm the family's journey, in addition to reinforcing their progress, we serve to build the relationships that convey, "I understand." Again, when empathy and compassion are used as a means to interacting with families, we actually increase the potential for positive outcomes. Affirming for the family shows that we are empathetic to their situation, in addition to the ability to reinforce their progress. And the final skill that we'll cover is the idea of summarizing. As you conclude collecting the family's story on a given topic, in this case, it was favorite foods, we can then use this information to summarize and then transition to the next question, which includes friends that he plays with. So this might sound a little something like this. You shared that family meal times can be a little difficult with Johnny's pickiness, and while he has several go-to foods that he enjoys, you'd really like to see him eating a wider variety that can allow your family to eat together and experience those moments of shared connections that family dinners can sometimes bring. Now, in thinking about those shared connections, both within the family but also outside the family, can you tell me a little bit about any special little friends that he's particularly connected to? So again, in summary, and using some of the information gained in order to transition to the next topic, we are again allowing the family to feel supported, heard, understood, and we've made those connections that really allow the interview to begin to take on that conversational shape. Now, this could potentially take some time, and this is definitely going to take getting to know the family assessment tool so that you can allow the process to become more seamless in knowing the questions that are being asked of the family, using those appropriate transitions and the skills that are going to allow the interview to become more conversational. So now that we've had this opportunity to explore the skills that make up conversational interviewing based upon those motivational interviewing techniques, we really want to hone in on what truly makes this process conversational for a family and why. Through conversation, a family feels less on the spot, like they're being prodded for information, and this may actually reduce their potential feelings of stress and or judgment. Remember from the last training on dispositions, judgment is a big player in families opening up their homes to professionals. So we really have to be aware of how we might be conveying this to families. So our intent through the conversation is to become balanced in our talking and listening, to be open in sharing our experience, not too much of course, and really putting families at ease in the situation of being asked to share intimate parts of their daily lives. So in addition to why we're using conversation as a starting block for the family assessment, we also have to know that conversation is about being genuine, balanced, relational, and relaxed. So as you can see, we contrasted some of the elements of the interview or intake feel to that of the feelings of the conversation observed in the family assessment. While the overall feeling of interviewing a family in an intake is about gaining information, with the interviewer leading the discussion and getting the job done, checking off all of the lists, the family assessment, in contrast, focuses on more of a connected, genuine curiosity about the family and their story. We focus on being attentive to the family, things like maintaining appropriate levels of eye contact and encouraging that elaboration. We want to keep the conversation balanced. It's about a give and a take, a back and a forth between what is being asked and what is being relayed. We also want to allow ourselves to be interesting and focus on the relationship. So this might include getting to know yourself and how you relate with others. Also feeling confident in yourself through practice, and humor is not a bad thing. Additionally, when we relax and we show that we care, we become relationship focused. We can breathe and we can be with that family as they share those intimate details of their lives. So just take this moment to consider how you would like to be interviewed in your own delicate needs. Would you want someone to understand your whole picture, to understand where you're coming from, to understand your needs in addition to the answers that they're seeking? Or would you prefer someone to just simply write down your short answers and move on to the next question? This is what we want to come forward with a family assessment, allowing families to be heard, allowing a conversation to occur around their family so that we can best assure them that we're here to support their needs. So to summarize this West Virginia Birth to 3 model of conversational interviewing, borrowing from the motivational interviewing model for the family assessment, we want to highlight several things as we bring this section to a close. Number one, in order to have that conversational interviewing feel with families, we have to move from a place of empathy and compassion. Those positive dispositions are going to allow us to create those relationships with families that allow for things like good first impressions and being able to relate with families on a deeper level to show them that we care. Number two, we want to use those motivational interviewing skills that we've gained from that model. We want to encourage storytelling through the use of open-ended questions. The more we can learn about a child and family and their unique situation, the better prepared we are to move into the evaluations and the IFSP that will ultimately determine the family's outcomes. When we collect that meaningful information about the family's life, we learn what's important to them and how we can best serve their needs. We do this through, again, open-ended questions, being reflective in the way that we're listening to families, through reinforcing their progress, affirming their challenges and difficulties, and summarizing and transitioning to things gracefully so that we can really bolster those conversational skills. Which takes us into our third, using those conversational skills. This is about creating those feelings of genuine interest with a family, being able to balance conversations so that it doesn't feel as though an interim service coordinator is simply leading the way, that the family has an equal part in what's being shared and conveyed. And finally, so that we can relax ourselves and allow the families to relax and feel at ease as they're sharing these intimate details of their lives. To conclude this section on conversational interviewing, we really want to highlight the ability to allow families a feeling of ease, a feeling of being heard, and an openness to share. The elements of this model support this process and have the building blocks of motivational interviewing as a research-based approach for success. If you find that this model resonates with you, awesome. We hope that this is something you feel ready to take directly into your practice with families. However, if you feel somewhat hesitant in making the shift to conversations, allow yourself to begin practicing one of the 3 areas at a time. The amazing thing about conversations and being conversational is that it's a skill that can be built and developed. This means that you can select one element highlighted above and choose to develop this skill within yourself. If you find, for example, that reflective listening seems difficult for you, focus on it for the day. Practice it with friends, family, and in your work. Practice will elevate your ability. Just as we encourage families, we also have that room for expansion. We hope that you enjoyed this section on conversational interviewing. This direction is so exciting, and we hope that you share in this excitement. The next section will move to the actual family assessment form, getting to know the sections, and potentially taking opportunities to highlight some of these conversational interviewing skills that we have discussed. In this next section of the family assessment training, we're going to include the how-to of facilitating a powerful family assessment through moving through the sections of the family assessment. In order to create this how-to for a powerful family assessment, this section of the training will encourage thinking through the sections. In doing this, we hope to create confidence in the why, or why are we gathering this information in these initial stages with families. As we move through the whys of gathering this information, we hope that this training is going to provide you with confidence in the tool's ability to then effectively allow you to gather this information. And finally, in a walkthrough of each of the sections, we have the opportunity to experience the flow of the family assessment and how it can work to eventually assist with the development of meaningful outcomes for the family if they should qualify for services. Remember, the initial sections of this overall training were the foundations, or those building blocks that allow for those positive dispositions and relationships to occur. Remember, don't be afraid to practice this tool with people who are willing to role play with you. When we think of the family assessment, we're considering that our first impressions really do set the stage for early intervention services. And as the interim service coordinator, you are that first face of West Virginia Birth to 3. So we have to lead with that intention to create that positive first impression. We set out in this initial section to discover the family situation or their story, who they are, what they like to do, what they struggle to do, while knowing that as an organization that's built to serve the needs of infants and toddlers, we truly can't serve their needs without the consent and participation of the family. We have to get to know who they are and what they're about in order to support their child's development. We do this through that comfortable conversational interviewing style that encourages the family to share, but also allows us to be mindful of when we need to slow down or when we need to suggest or encourage, and when even we need to be backing off just a bit. This requires an ability to call on those soft skills that we reviewed and positive dispositions so that we may be effective in the way that we approach gathering this information. As you can see in this slide, our first section includes the important things about the family. As we look to understand the importance of this initial section, we see that in our big picture thinking that we need to know how to contact families, and we need to know who those consistent people are in the child's life. Those are the people that we're going to be supporting. Furthermore, in this section, we have the opportunity to learn who supports the child medically, and if any concerns arise surrounding this, we have the ability to reach out for additional supports. Additionally, within this section, we can discover if any potential barriers exist regarding financial hardship or financial crisis. As we move through this section with a family, we've practiced those skills that conveyed to the family that our presence is one of acceptance and non-judgment. We do this the moment we step through the doors of the home. We've taken those steps to assure that our presence is meant to be a support rather than a barrier to their well-being. We've done this through our careful and mindful approach to our own disposition and the way in which we come across to the family. We walk through their door, dropping our own assumptions, values, and beliefs, and begin to learn theirs. In doing this, we begin to build that positive relationship with the family that enables us to gain access to their life. From here, upon beginning the conversation, we also provide the family with the respect of telling them why we're asking the questions that we do. So as we move into the next slide of this training, we're going to look at the whys of a few of the questions within the form that presented some overall concern initially from our implementation team. Additionally, we'll look at some sample conversation starters that are meant to provide families with an explanation in that conversational tone. The first area of clarification deals with the item that asks families about others living in their home. This question is asked not for the prying of information unrelated to early intervention, but it's directly tied to the services that we provide. As we discussed in the Mission and Key Principles training, we know that consistent individuals in the child's life serve to make the largest impact on their development. So this item allows us to begin exploring this with the family. As you can see in the example, a conversation starter in this area may sound a little something like this. One of the greatest things about working with babies and toddlers is that we approach what we do knowing that you are the expert of your child. And this means that we respect that the closest people to your child are the ones that are going to make the biggest impact. While we're here to guide you through our support, we're aware that the people who are closest to your child will ultimately be his best teachers because they're here consistently. So with that being said, could you please share a little bit about everybody who lives here with you and their age and relationship to your child? As you can see through this example, we've provided an explanation of why we're asking what we're asking for, and we've also done it in a conversational way. This is not to be a template or a standardized way to approach it, but just a general guide to exploring how to create a conversational feel to this interview process. You can find your own comfort with this guide and then make it yours. What we want to stray from is that cold, interview-only process of simply asking, can you give me the names, ages, and relationships to your child of everyone in the home? The reason for this is so that we can create that ease, comfort, and respect for the family in sharing the information about themselves. The second item that we'd like to cover included that of the demographic information being asked of the family. Now, this item was flagged to be somewhat intrusive and could ultimately become intrusive without the proper introduction given to the family and the conversational feel lacking. So knowing that when basic needs are not being met, all other activities tend to assume a back burner. When we think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we see that without the family's basic security being met, we will find difficulty making an impact with the family. So this item holds two purposes. Number one, we're given an opportunity to discover if a family is struggling to find that security. And number two, as discussed with the implementation team, if in the event at some point the system would require a sliding fee-for-service approach, this item would be readily available and already have been utilized. So as we look as an example of forming a conversational and respectful approach to asking this information of families, we really want to move away from simply asking, can you please share your family's income with me? Instead, we can make this a conversation by sharing why we're asking this information, such as, this program is about supporting the needs of families in ways that can help support the development of the child. Sometimes if a family is struggling to make it financially, it can understandably take the priority over creating opportunities for a child's developmental gains. So we ask your family's income range, not for any other reason than to assist you if we can. West Virginia does have programs that are available that can ease the burden if there is one. So do you mind sharing with me your family's income range? Is that less than $20,000? And so on and so on. Now this slide covers the important things about the child. As you can see from the slide, this section is about learning the strengths and needs of the child from the family's perspective. We're granted special access by the family to know how they perceive their child's abilities. And this spans beyond the scope of our single visit, which only provides us with our perspective. And with the parents' input, extends into the community and play dates and on into the wee hours of the morning when the child may be up in the middle of the night. Robin McWilliams, an early intervention researcher, discovered that in order to form a solid picture of a child's functioning, 8 different visits of 15 minutes each on different days were required. We're not going to get that in our family assessment or even through our full evaluation. But what we do have is that pivotal perspective of the parents or the individuals that are with the child consistently. We really have to express how vital the family's perspective is in this process so that we're setting the stage for the importance of their participation in the delivery of services. Now, as you can see, we have a conversation starter available which goes a little something like this. One of my favorite things about this job is to learn what parents find to be the most enjoyable about their children. And this allows us to really be thoughtful about how we work with your baby. Because if we're using the things that they enjoy and staying away from the things that they don't, chances are they're going to be more receptive to what we're doing. So this is where I need you, because you are truly the expert of your child. What would make you say that you're so proud of your baby? What does she do? What just makes your heart sing about her? Now, it's incredible to hear families sharing what makes them smile about their children. And it also opens the door to then asking about what the child's good at, and so on. While we're engaging in this conversation, we must also be listening to then ask further questions using the information that we gather. So if a parent responds that their child's really good at grabbing for the chips when the parent's eating them, we can then use this in the favorite food section by saying something like, well, we know that Sally really likes those chips. Is there anything else that she really likes to eat? As we approach each of these questions, as discussed earlier in this training, we're approaching it from that conversational feel. And again, in the counseling profession, it's truly recommended that when conducting an interview, questions are somewhat memorized to enhance this conversational flow and allow for those easy transitions. As this tool is practiced, it's going to become easier. So again, if you have that willing role play participant in your life that's willing to provide you with multiple scenarios, this can enhance your delivery and your ability to flow with conversation while practicing those skills that will set you up for leading the families to discover these answers to these questions, some of them which they may never have thought of before. This leads us to the What's on My Mind section of the interview. This section allows us to understand why we're at the family's home. While in some circumstances, families are not expressing a direct concern, we can provide them with opportunities to explore this, to discover how their child's needs may actually be affecting their thoughts in their day-to-day life, which then assists us in understanding where the importance lies for this particular family. Why this is important is that this section will ultimately drive the creation of the IFSP goals. If we can get to the root of the worries for parents, it will help us to create meaningful IFSP goals that will eventually resonate with the family. Remember, the point of Birth to 3 is not to simply tackle those developmental skills, but to do so in the context of the family's immediate concerns and needs. We have to have them on board, and the most reliable way to do this is through targeting what's important to them. So as you can see, we have some example conversation starters that will provide an opportunity for you to simply explore the ways in which you can introduce this section to the family and set the stage for early intervention services if in fact this child qualifies. It could go something like this. What I love most about early intervention is that we get the opportunity to work directly with parents to really target those things that are important for you and your family. The way we go about creating goals in birth to 3 is by understanding the things that are important to you, but also that concern you. So if your baby qualifies for these services, this will help us to understand where to start in creating these goals so that it's meaningful for you and your family and not just another thing to do, but that it's really embedded into your lifestyle. So at this point in time, how would you describe your concerns for your child? As you can see, we've provided the family with an explanation about why we're asking these questions, and we've also restated it for ourselves. In some instances, families may not have had a concern, but were actually referred due to someone else's concern, such as a doctor, or a friend, or a screen that may have been done by another type of professional. In these instances, you may have to lead a parent through this section with some additional open-ended questions, such as, can you describe how she plays with other children when you're out and about? Or how would you say Sally tells you about the things that she wants and needs? These questions allow for opening up parents in perspective to explore what potential concerns may actually be present. As you explore the worries of the family, we can look at this from the perspective of the parent, either focusing on present or future concerns. We know that if a parent reports that they worry about the present, they may say something like, I'm really afraid that he's going to hurt himself when he's trying to pull up to the table. We know that this is an immediate place to begin looking at the IFSP outcomes. However, if a parent reports that their concerns lie in the future, we begin to see those family outcomes that may be targeted as well. So a parent may say something like, I'm afraid he won't do well in kindergarten. This allows us to see those areas that we can support the family in their understanding of those skills that are necessary for kindergarten and how we are assisting them through the targeted developmental skills within the context of the family's life now. This section holds a lot of potential information that will eventually assist us in knowing about the family's immediate concerns and where their worrying is taking place, meaning the present or the future. We can begin to see how our support as a birth to 3 team may assist not just the child, but the family through this process. And finally, as we ask the family what exactly they would like help with, by understanding the previous questions, we may be able to help through easing their concerns and worries. As we move through this, we have to keep in mind that this type of support is not the typical supports that families are used to. When we go to the doctor, we relay a concern and they attempt to fix it. We are a model that supports families in identifying their true concerns, which are not always quick fixes, someone else do it kind of concerns. And additionally, these are not always the types of questions that families are used to being asked in these scenarios. When is the last time that you went to a doctor and they asked about your worries in the context of your child's illness? This is actually a new territory for most parents. We're asking them to provide us with their thoughts, and it's typically not the norm. So please be gentle as you walk a family through this section. Understand that they're not used to answering these types of questions, and use all of those incredible conversation and soft skills to show a family that we care about them in this process as well. In the words of Dr. Seuss, oh, the places we go. This section affords us the opportunity to explore the typical routines and places that a family spends most of their days. Why is this so important? Because first, we need to know what the natural environment of the child actually is. It may be a daycare, it may be grandma's house, it may be outside in the yard or in front of the TV. Regardless of where it is and how we feel about it, we need to know it and to show support and acceptance for the family. As you introduce this section of the conversation to the family, it may sound a little something like this. Another thing about birth to 3 that's different from your typical therapies is that we're able to support you in the situations and the places that your child's typically a part of. We want services to become part of your lifestyle, one that is going to be about enhancing your child's development without even thinking about having to do something new. It's just simply incorporating intervention into the places that you're already spending your time. So with this being said, I'd like to know, what are the things that are a regular part of your week? Where do you spend most of your mornings during the week? We want to highlight for families that Birth to 3 is not just an on-the-living-room floor type of therapy, but we are aiming to embed intervention into their daily lives. We need to know their daily lives, in the home and beyond. This section affords us the opportunity to know where the family is spending the majority of their time, and allows us to begin looking forward to creating IFSP outcomes and goals that really meet the needs of the family, literally, where they're at. Additionally, as a system, we have this network of parents that are really supportive of each other. Do you think that this is something that you might be interested in? By understanding the family supports, we're guided to provide assistance in the areas that they might benefit from. Keeping a firm grasp of why we've asked these questions really helps us to better understand the purpose of the family assessment. It's not just an information explosion, but it's a tool to help us identify exactly what's important to the family, what strengths and needs are apparent, and how we can match our outcomes to really meet the needs of this specific family. And now, moving to the important things about my child's health section, we have to keep in mind that this section could very easily turn into a question and response type format. So amp up those conversational skills, and this can become a discussion that really helps us to understand the family's situation further. We may have insight into the stress of the family due to any medical issues and needs. We may potentially determine if any further screenings may be necessary. And finally, we get to know the family's medical experience in raising their child. So as you're writing the information or typing the information, remember to check in with the family, look at them, listen to what they have to say, and show empathy in those situations that have challenged the family. Affirm for them, restate for them, be reflective in your listening. A simple wow, that must have been incredibly stressful for you, can provide a family with a feeling of support and trust in the services that you're a part of. So as you can see, moving through these sections of the medical history, we're coming at this from a holistic perspective and gaining that access through the family. We're learning the child and family's medical story from multiple angles. The understanding of the situation, the important people and places, strengths and needs, resources, and medical history will better identify the outcomes that can make a difference for a family. It's a shift from the developmental areas. But keep in mind, the evaluation will provide the developmental information that we need. This family assessment will provide us with the foundation to the outcomes that will be meaningful to the family. Moving on to the resources section, when we know the full holistic picture of the family, we can then become more able to better assist them with any additional supports or resources that might enhance their experience in birth to 3 and their child's development. We've already gathered some important experience and insight from the family, and will better be able to explain the resources that are available based upon our understanding of the family. So you might introduce this section through a conversation, pulling this process to a close, such as, "Thank you so much for providing all of this information and sharing your story with me. I hope that you recognize how West Virginia Birth to 3 is a family model that aims to support you in whatever ways may benefit your family in the care of your child. I'd like to go over some of the supports that you already have and any additional ones that you might like some more information on. You'd mentioned that Johnny is currently at daycare 3 times a week, but that you're not completely satisfied with the center. Would you like more information on the different childcare options that are available within the area?" The ability to make this a conversational feel is through using what you already know to help make the checkoff items flow and show that you've not only been filling out a form, but that you've actually been listening to what the family has shared with you. As you're bringing the questions to a close and sharing the assessment and evaluation process with the family, it's encouraged that the conversation moves toward providing the family with the next steps, the option for the developmental screen, and recap of what you've discussed, which shows that you were listening to their unique story. Asking the family, where do you need more support to help your child, is the jump-off point from which to say, is there anything that we've overlooked in how you can be supported in helping your child? This may sound something like, we have discussed a lot today, and I thank you for giving me the privilege to hear your family's story. Based upon everything that we've talked about, I've learned that you would like Birth to 3 to assist you in X, Y, and Z. Am I correct in this? And is there anything else that we might not have covered in our conversation that you would like any additional support in to help your child? Finally, we move through the selection of evaluators. We describe the importance of selecting someone to evaluate, and though we're not able to lead a family in a certain direction in their selection, we gather the desires that they have for an evaluator and assist them in meeting their needs based upon the directory's specifications. This may sound like, in moving forward, I'm going to hand you this directory describing the potential evaluators available. I'm not going to make you swim through this by yourself, however. You'll be asked to select 2 evaluators from 2 different disciplines. Let's think first about some of the things that we'd like to consider in selecting the disciplines. You'd mentioned that your major concerns revolved around. Again, this shows the family that you were using this information, not to simply write it down because it was on the form, but because it's vital. We want the family to understand that their input and participation is vital to the process, that we respect them where they're at. We will assist them by looking through the directory and pulling out the potential matches within the directory to their expressed concerns, and allow them to select the evaluator that they feel speaks to them. Moving through the final process, we invite the family to think of people who have important insight into their child's development that they might like to invite to the meeting. We set the potential date for the eligibility and IFSP meeting, and we review those procedural safeguards. In concluding the family assessment with a family, always remember to thank the family for allowing you into their home. We have to keep in mind how this process may be difficult for some families. Opening up their home can sometimes be stressful. People will sometimes feel the need to clean in an already busy situation, and we can recognize the gravity of their willingness to open their home by simply saying thank you for having me and welcoming me into your home. Take the time to find something to compliment about the family and their child. At times, this may be difficult, but something is there. You may have to search for it, but it can be as simple as expressing to the family, it's obvious that your child loves you. I saw her light up each time you mentioned her name. By finding a strength that the family possesses and making the effort to then express that, you leave the family feeling positive, which may affect their view of the Birth to 3 system. Express to the family that it was a pleasure to have met them. Let them know that you've truly enjoyed hearing their story and learning all about them. And finally, show the ongoing supportive nature of West Virginia Birth to 3 by answering any further questions that the family might have and encouraging them to phone with any additional questions. It was our hope by the end of this lesson that you would feel more comfortable in the questions involved in the family assessment, and also that you'd feel more comfortable with the idea of a conversational style that's going to be used to gather this information. Understandably, this shift from intake or interview to that of conversation, again, will require some practice, but in time, we hope that through conversation and our ability to make this process feel natural and connected with families, that you will find that your relationships with families are deepening and you're discovering those meaningful moments in the family's life that will assist in moving to create those powerful IFSPs. This process of the family assessment truly has the potential to shift the creation of outcomes, the way in which services are delivered, and the relationships that occur between the families and West Virginia Birth to Three. We truly thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you in the next training.